The 2022-23 UEFA Nations League season kicks off tomorrow, making this an appropriate time to forecast to how the tournament will unfold. I will start with League D and move up until League A is completed. Group D1 contains Liechtenstein, Moldova, Andorra and Latvia. The Latvians' previous Nations League season was very disappointing, finishing third in their League D group behind the Faroe Islands and Malta. However, Latvia's display was still better than that of Liechtenstein and Andorra. As a result, they should be favored over those two. Comparing them with Moldova is trickier, since Moldova played in a different division. Other sources are needed to distinguish them, like their qualification campaigns for the 2022 World Cup, where Latvia performed marginally better, even after accounting for the fact that their group was a little easier. Another thing that indicates Latvia's superiority is their higher ELO rating. Group D2 consists of Malta, Estonia and San Marino. The latter of the three can instantly be disregarded as a promotion contender, as Malta and Estonia simply are better. Comparing those two's earlier Nations League displays is difficult, because they played in different divisions. Additionally, they both enjoyed the same number of points per match in qualification for the 2022 World Cup. Estonia beat Belarus, a team slightly better than the sole team Malta defeated, Cyprus. However, Malta also picked up an impressive 2-2 draw away against Slovakia, which means Estonia can't really be pronounced favorites on these grounds alone. ELO ratings are once again required as a tiebreaker. Estonia and Malta are ranked 104th and 145th respectively. As a result, Estonia should be marginally favored to top the group. Now let's move up to League C. Turkey seem out of place alongside Luxembourg, Lithuania and the Faroe Islands. The Turks are the definitive favorites to top this group, as they are simply stronger than any other team in it. They have better players and were superior in qualification for the 2022 World Cup, despite falling short in the playoffs. Out of the remaining three teams, Luxembourg is the strongest. Given their small population, this might seem counterintuitive, and in a way it is, but they outperformed Lithuania and the Faroe Islands in qualifying for the 2022 World Cup, and the previous Nations League season. They even sensationally defeated the Republic of Ireland in Dublin. Distinguishing Lithuania and the Faroe Islands is more complicated, as they played in different divisions in the preceding Nations League campaign. Additionally, the points they obtained per match in World Cup qualifying are too minuscule to base conclusions on. The difference of their points, that is. ELO ratings are required as a tiebreaker, which makes the Faroe Islands poised for the relegation playouts. Lithuania being relegated instead of them is also well within the realm of possibility though. Containing Northern Ireland, Greece, Kosovo and Cyprus, Group C2 could very well be considered the group of death of this Nations League division. The two frontrunners for promotion are Northern Ireland and Greece, with Kosovo and Cyprus likely fighting to stay up. Hellas should be marginally favored over Northern Ireland since they perform better in World Cup qualifying and enjoy a slightly higher ELO rating. For similar reasons, Kosovo looks likely to reign supreme over Cyprus. The island nation will probably be heading to the relegation playouts. Group C3 consists of Slovakia, Belarus, Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. The Belarusian national team can count itself lucky to even be allowed to participate, due to the country's involvement in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They do have to play behind closed doors though, which undoubtedly is a disadvantage. Regardless, Azerbaijan are more likely to be relegated to the playouts. They have the worst ELO rating and were outperformed by all other Group C3 teams in World Cup qualifying. Using the same logic, Slovakia should be able to finish in first place, not to mention that their squad is by far the strongest. With Bulgaria, North Macedonia and Georgia, Group C4 also has a decent case to be regarded as the group of death. The one thing holding it back is the noticeably weaker side Gibraltar, who will almost certainly finish in fourth place, as they simply are the weakest out of these four teams. It's still worth noting that Gibraltar is pretty good for such a small and new national team though. However, this group is too hard for them. Even though first place isn't as clear-cut, North Macedonia will likely achieve promotion. They performed better in World Cup qualifying than any other team in the group. The Lynxes even managed to sensationally defeat Italy and Germany. It's worth noting that Georgia also have a bit of an X factor though. This was highlighted by them leading Spain at one point and shockingly beating Sweden in World Cup qualifiers. Either way, North Macedonia's greater consistency gives them an edge. Bulgaria won't stand a chance of being promoted unless they enjoy massive improvements. We've now arrived at League B. Group B1 contains 2 teams from the British Isles, Scotland and the Republic of Ireland. It also includes Ukraine, who have been forced to play all their home matches at neutral venues until further notice, due to Russia's invasion. Up to and including the June matches, that neutral venue is Lodz in Poland. Armenia rounds off the group. The newly promoted side will likely go back to the division they came from by the end of the season. All the other teams have stronger squads and performed better in qualification for the 2022 World Cup. The promotion spot is up for grabs, with the remaining 3 teams all having plausible chances of securing it. However, the Republic of Ireland were quite poor in World Cup qualifying. They have proven to be a cut below Ukraine and Scotland. Comparing those two is difficult. Ukraine went undefeated in the World Cup qualifiers. Not even France could trump them over 2 fixtures. However, the Ukrainians drew 6 out of 8 matches, even ones they should be winning, like against Kazakhstan. Meanwhile, Scotland lost against a strong Danish side and drew against Israel and a struggling Austria team. They still obtained more points per match than Ukraine though. The fact that Ukraine's group was tougher than Scotland's only partially justifies the difference, but not entirely. Ukraine is a strong team that may very well go undefeated again. Despite this, their tendency to drop points against teams they should be beating makes it more probable that Scotland will top the group. Also, it's impossible to ignore the fact that Ukraine has been forced to play all their home matches abroad. This makes them less potent on home soil than they would have otherwise been. Following the suspension of Russia due to their invasion of Ukraine, Group B2 now only has 3 teams: Iceland, Israel and Albania. And I gotta be honest, it's very bizarre that one of them will be in League A next season. The suspension of Russia relegates them by default, meaning we are only left to predict who will be promoted from this group. Iceland will likely not be that team, since they performed notably worse than Israel and Albania in World Cup qualifying, both of which have a solid case to be pronounced group winners. Albania performed marginally better in the European qualifiers, but Israel's ELO rating is fractionally higher. Not to mention they possess 2 goal machines in Munas Dabur and Eran Sahavi. This illustrates that Albania and Israel are indistinguishable. For the sake of actually making a prediction and not sit on the fence, I'm gonna predict that Israel will be promoted. In Group B3, Finland and Bosnia and Herzegovina, who share the World Cup qualification groups, can be found. Alongside those two are Romania and Montenegro, making the group highly competitive. The fight for first place will most likely be contested by Finland and Romania, the latter of whom did actually slightly eclipse the Finns in World Cup qualifying. However, the same is true for Finland when it comes to the previous Nations League season, and their ELO rating is a little higher. Also, the Finns had a somewhat tougher group. In other words, nothing separates Finland and Romania except gut feeling. Once again, for the sake of actually making a prediction and not just sit on the fence, I'm gonna predict that Finland will be promoted. You might think it's odd to disregard a seemingly on paper decent Bosnia and Herzegovina as a promotion contender, but they were poor in World Cup qualifying and only won a single match. So poor in fact that even Montenegro obtained more points per match. Nevertheless, Montenegro's group was a bit easier, and Bosnia enjoy a higher ELO rating and stronger squad. They should be able to finish above Montenegro. With Sweden, Norway, Serbia and Slovenia, there's a fair case for this group to be regarded as the group of death in League B. Even the weakest team, Slovenia, is a respectable side. Either way, they will most likely be relegated, as all the other teams in this group simply are stronger. Predicting who will be promoted is a bigger challenge. Sweden is complicated. They won all home matches in World Cup qualifying, even against Spain, but lost all away matches except the one against Kosovo. Even Georgia defeated Sweden at home. Right now, it seems Sweden are too inconsistent to win the group. Norway's performance in the European qualifiers was comparable, despite being more consistently good and bad home and away. Serbia was better than both Sweden and Norway and is the only team in the group that will be in the World Cup this November. The Serbs even defeated Portugal in Lisbon to clinch their spot at the competition, not to mention they have a stronger squad and superior ELO rating. Serbia have to be regarded as favorites to be promoted from this group. Last but not least, we have League A. Group A1 contains defending world champions France, alongside their 2018 World Cup final opponent Croatia. Denmark stood on the threshold of a European final last summer and will be eager to keep hunting success in this Nations League season. An inconsistent Austria rounds off the group. As reigning world champions and the team with the group's strongest squad, one might be tempted to instantly pronounce France as group winners. It's not that straightforward though. Not only because of France's poor Euro 2020 display, but also because of their tendency to drop points against weaker teams in World Cup qualifying. Denmark actually outperformed France in both competitions. Le Bleu's tougher opposition only partially justifies that, but not entirely. A possible explanation for France's occasional underwhelming scorelines is that they're a team that tends to do just enough to win, but nothing more. Like at the 2018 World Cup, where they won it all despite being mediocre in the group stage. No team came close to clinching the direct qualification spots ahead of France, meaning a draw was often enough for them. Also, they proved to be potent in the Nations League last season by winning a highly competitive group. Denmark is also a good team. Upon examining the clubs represented by a starting lineup of Denmark's national team, one could be forgiven for thinking it belongs to sides like the Netherlands or Germany, a sentiment further reflected in ELO ratings. Denmark reaching the Euro semifinals was a legitimately strong team, living up to the expectations, not a sensational underdog story. Regardless, France just are a stronger side, and should be favored as a result. The sheer depth of their squad is just incredible. However, Denmark do have a real chance to reach the finals ahead of France. Croatia, although still solid, have declined too much since their 2018 high to be considered a top spot contender. Their performance in the World Cup qualifiers is comparable with what France and Denmark accomplished. Croatia's Euro performance was similar to Le Bleu's, both being relegated in the last 16 on Magic Monday, but France's group was tougher. Croatia's display in the previous Nations League season is a cause for concern, obtaining just 3 points in a group that, in all fairness, was very tough. Nonetheless, the point talents of France and Denmark were too much higher for Croatia to be excused by their group being difficult, especially France, whom they shared groups with. Croatia's ELO rating functions as another tiebreaker. However, the Croatians should be favored over Austria, who were poor in World Cup qualifying, despite enjoying a good Euro campaign. Austria's inconsistency, combined with their squad being the group's weakest, makes relegation seem probable, unless the newly appointed Ralf Rangnick can bring back the wounded team of the 1930s, or at least the form they showed at the Euros. Group A2 is interesting, housing Spain and Portugal, who will make up an eagerly awaited Iberian derby. It has the potential to be very exciting. Similarly, Switzerland have been part of some exciting matches in these last years, and also calls this group home. The Czech Republic rounds off the group. The Czechs is a solid side, but this group is too competitive for them not to finish fourth. Their squad and performance in World Cup qualifying is worse than any other team in the group. It's worth noting that the Czechs reached farther than Portugal at the Euros. However, that's too anecdotal to save them from relegation in these predictions. Switzerland cannot be underestimated. They marginally outperformed Portugal in both World Cup qualifying and at the Euros. Meanwhile, Portugal enjoys a fractionally higher ELO rating and a stronger squad. In other words, Portugal and Switzerland are indistinguishable. Spain narrowly eclipsed them at the Euros and in the World Cup qualifiers, making them the narrowest of frontrunners. Also, La Roja's ELO rating is microscopically superior. But make no mistake, the fight for first place is a 3-horse race, one that will likely be extraordinarily close. Spain, Portugal, and even Switzerland can win it. Group A3 is terrifying. It contains the teams that made up last year's Euro final, Italy and England. Alongside those two are a redemption-seeking German side, with a successful and relatively newly appointed manager, Hansi Flick, who recently guided Bayern München to a Champions League title. Even the presumptive whipping boys of the group, Hungary, have produced some impressive results throughout these last couple of years. Regardless, there's no denying they will almost certainly be relegated. All of the other teams in this staggering group are better. Had Italy maintained the form shown at the Euros, they could be marginal favorites to finish on top, but things have changed since then. After dropping points against Bulgaria, Switzerland and Northern Ireland in World Cup qualifying, the Azzurri shockingly lost at home to North Macedonia and missed 2 consecutive World Cups for the first time in their history. At this point, Italy are a bit behind England and Germany, until proven otherwise. Germany also recently suffered a devastating defeat against North Macedonia in the European qualifiers, but Die Mannschaft recovered well by winning the remaining matches. Germany's great recovery after their disastrous loss made their World Cup qualifying performance on par with England's, who dropped points against Poland and Hungary. However, England eclipsed Germany in the preceding Nations League season, though by a small margin, and at Euro 2020. In fact, the Three Lions even defeated Die Mannschaft at the Euros. Hansi Flick may very well get Germany back on their feet and on top of the group, but England is still the front runner heading into the competition. Group A4 offers a potentially exhilarating Benelux derby between Belgium and the Netherlands. A Robert Lewandowski-inspired Poland can also be found here. They're not a one-man team though. Lastly, the group contains a Welsh side spearheaded by Gareth Bale. Belgium should be regarded as the favorite to reach the finals, even though they will face stern competition from their neighbours to the north, the Netherlands. Regardless, the Belgians obtained more points per match in both World Cup qualifying and the previous Nations League season than any other team in the group. If that wasn't enough, they also outperformed all their upcoming Group A4 foes at Euro 2020. Some people claim that Belgium's golden generation is running out of time, and it arguably is, but the Red Devils are still the frontrunners in this group. Using the same logic, it can be assumed that the Netherlands won't have to participate in the relegation battle. That clash will likely be fought by Poland and Wales, who kick off this Nations League season tomorrow. The encounter will likely be close. Wales slightly exceeded Poland at the Euros, and Poland marginally eclipsed Wales in the World Cup qualifying. Similarly, their ELO ratings are too even for any conclusions to be reached. With an unscientific gut feeling as the tiebreaker, I'm gonna predict that Wales will be relegated. Thank you a lot for watching the video. Remember to like and subscribe, and please tell me your predictions in the comment section.